How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Ray Talks Hoop. First things first, I want to send my prayers out to Chris Boucher. If you watched yesterday's game, then you saw what happened to Chris Boucher. Even though we do not know the extent of his injury just yet, yesterday we saw Chris Boucher laying on the floor, grabbing his knee while he was crying. And for those who may not know, Chris Boucher is a very tough guy. His life story is one that is very inspiring, and it is a story that is far from an easy life. Even his basketball career. This guy had to play JUCO long before he even made it to the NBA. So what I'm getting at is, for Chris Boucher to be on the floor in tears, it must have been something serious. Now, I hope that that is not the case, of course, but after seeing him yesterday, I'm just a little afraid to find out what it really is, despite what the original reports are saying. So I know that Chris Boucher is a very tough guy, both physically and mentally. So because of that, and because of the way I saw him laying on the floor yesterday in tears, I'm afraid, but I hope he's okay. I wish him a speedy recovery. Now, you may or may not have noticed, but I did not post a video for the past week and a half. Now, some of you might be wondering why, and some of you don't really care. But the reason for that is I was painting my entire room. I was getting this neon sign made so that the background could look a little bit nicer, and all of that took about a week and a half. But we're back, here to talk about the NBA. And one more update really fast before we get into the Raptors versus Nets game from last night. Starting next week, we are taking the production quality up like 10 levels. I'm not just talking about the background or the neon sign or anything like that. The editing in these videos is going to be through the roof. So I'm very excited for that. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about this game from yesterday. So the most important part is the Toronto Raptors came out with a win. I remember not too long ago, the Raptors could not buy a win. I believe they went 5 weeks straight with only winning 1 or 2 games. Now, out of the Raptors' last 10 games, they have won 6 of them and lost 4 of those games. That is a whole lot better than what they were doing a month or so ago when they lost 10 games in a row. Or I believe it was 9 games in a row, but at that point, does it really matter? Now, in case you have not been watching too many NBA games, or if you just have not been keeping up, the reason for that, well, the primary reason I should say, is because a lot of the key guys on the Toronto Raptors were not able to play due to contact tracing. Fred Vanvleet was not playing, Pascal Siakam was not playing, the list could go on. So the Raptors were forced to step onto the court each and every night without some of their main guys. It was essentially Kyle Lowry and a bunch of average players on the Toronto Raptors. So I'm glad to see that the team is back, and even though the Nets did not have Kevin Durant or James Harden last night, at the end of the day, a win is a win. And after losing so many games in a row just a month or so ago, I'm sure the Toronto Raptors and their fans are happy to get a win no matter which way it comes at this point. So speaking of yesterday's game, one thing I want to point out is the fact that every single player on the Toronto Raptors contributed to the win. It wasn't too long ago when I would pull up the stats and say, no wonder the Raptors lost by 30 points. Only 5 or 6 people contributed. Meanwhile, the Raptors have a center, not to say anybody's name, Baines, who would step on the court for 20-30 minutes and have as many points and rebounds as you and I watching from the couch. But that was not the case yesterday. Everybody on the Toronto Raptors did a phenomenal job. Let's read off some stats. Siakam had 27 points, 9 assists, and 6 rebounds. OG had 25 points, and I will say, whenever I see OG land, I get a little bit scared. He's jumping really high and his landing looks a little bit scary. It's not often that I go on the NBA's YouTube channel to watch some highlights, but yesterday I happened to do that actually, and one of the top comments was saying the exact same thing. So I guess it's not just me thinking that, and maybe I need to go on the NBA's channel more often to see what other people are thinking, but I guess the reason I don't do that is because I don't want my opinion to be swayed by somebody else. I don't know. I don't mean to get too off topic here, but I don't know. Kyle Lowry had 14, 7, and 5. And Fred Vanvleet had 17 points. So those were the main scores in yesterday's game, but every single player, like I said earlier, every player on the Raptors that stepped onto the court yesterday contributed to the scoreboard. And as a team, the Raptors shot almost 40% from 3. And I've said this in maybe 10 other videos, but 9 out of 10 times, if your team as a whole is shooting pretty much 40% from the 3-point line, there is a very good chance your team is going to win that game. Just to put it into perspective, I believe Steph Curry is a 43% 3-point shooter or something like that, something close to 43%. So if your team as a whole is shooting near 40% from the 3-point line, regardless of if the other team has Michael Jordan and LeBron James on the same lineup, your team is probably going to win. It has to be a very rare circumstance for your team to shoot 40% from the 3-point line and lose. And don't get me wrong, I do see stuff like that happening pretty often, especially in the NBA, but like I said, 9 out of 10 times, if your team shoots 40% from the 3-point line, you do a pretty decent job defending the ball and a pretty decent job with everything else, you're most likely going to win the game. And that's what we saw yesterday from the Toronto Raptors. So even though I am not a Raptor fan, I have been keeping up with them a lot this past season, and I'm excited to see the future of that team. They just got a very young Gary Trent Jr., who I thought was going to be a good player for the Raptors, but he's actually playing way better than I expected him to do. I thought he was going to be this good in 2 years, but instead he's being this good as of right now. With the exception of yesterday, he did not have the best game yesterday, but I'm not going to look at one game and make a huge generalization about it. For the most part, ever since Gary Trent has joined the Toronto Raptors, he's been absolutely killing it. So I'm excited for the Raptors' future with Gary Trent and with all the other young pieces I can see them getting in this upcoming draft and the trades I can see Masai doing in the next couple of months to the next couple of years. I have no idea what Masai is thinking. However, one thing that I've learned just from watching the Raptors a lot this year and from kind of watching them a little bit in 2019 when they won the championship, Masai is someone who you may not know what he's doing at the time, but in hindsight, a lot of his decisions turn out to be the right choice. So if I'm a Raptors fan, I'm pretty happy with that. Anyway, if you made it all the way through, please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button down below. I'm not going to give out too much information on what I plan on posting next week, but I will say that it has to do with a player on the Toronto Raptors, and it is a very fascinating story. And the video has taken like 40 hours to edit or something like that. So I promise you, if you are a Raptors fan, you do not want to miss that video whatsoever. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys next week. I am out of here.